So I've got a Pioneer CT540, no power cord. Feels like a reasonably substantial deck, but maybe they just want it to feel that way. Magnetophone, a cassette stereo. Stereo cassette deck, that's just in a different language, I guess. Under the license of Star SA Brussels, Belgium. Has this got Dolby, or is that some other system? Dolby noise reduction. Chrome and metal tapes, or normal. It's got a Pioneer IC in it. I don't see the Dolby's maybe on this end here. It's got Hitachi Dolby chips, HA11226 or 11226. Interesting. We've got a BA6109, which is like a motor drive IC, what you'd find in a VCR or something. So we've got two motors here. That belt looks a bit iffy. It's possibly even stuck to the capstan. No, that's alright, I think. Counterbelt. Yeah, interesting bit of electronics in it. A little bit over the top. Power off, mute, playback, amp, bias oscillator, Dolby it says there, but this must be for the switch. Not sure what that Pioneer chip does. Does that run the level meters, or what is this? Is this? Oh, this is a soft touch, so these are little kind of control IC, I guess. Wouldn't call it a microprocessor yet, but get a power cord on this thing and see what it actually does. Did or didn't do. I can hear something, the motor's running, the capstan belt's turning. Making a bit of an odd noise. Oh, we'll just drop the deck down. Eject. Play, it probably needs to press. Doesn't seem to do anything. What's that old tape? I was reckon that if I reckon anything. And it does detect the tape in. Oh, we're chewing. No take up reel. No fast forward. Oh yeah, got a nice little loop there. Even though I stopped it almost immediately. Well, that might make a good test tape, that one. So which switch detects? Maybe we're going to have the door shut. Door shut, lift that. Ah, bingo. Did I just see that turning then? No. Well, that would be running off this motor. Jesus, making a bit of a noise when I tilt it up like that. A lot of vibration there, so I don't know if that's the capstan itself or the motor. Probably the capstan itself. I'm not really in the mood for having it put on all this to bits, but the door comes off easy enough. Looks like I've got two screws there. This one looks a bit like the T-Ac where it has to come out of the back. But I don't think I've ever worked on one of these decks. It's certainly, if I did, it was a long time ago. I can see two screws sticking through the bottom. Nice spot to put the power switch. That might have to come out as well by the look of it. Still feels like it's well attached. There's something at the front. It's got all this plastic stuff everywhere. I don't know if we've got to take that off. That's part of the front, surely. Do we need to take the aluminium off? Oh, I'm guessing there's screws through somewhere there. Can't see anything. Let's just check. That bracket's loose. It's definitely pivoting at the front there. Like something's holding it on, so I think I may have to pop this aluminium bit off, or do I take the whole... Let's loosen that screw on the aluminium and see what happens, I guess. I think some of these you just take the aluminium bit off, and some I've got to take the whole front off. Well, I guess we might as well see if this comes apart, and if it actually does anything. It's only pretty cosmetic, I think. It doesn't feel like it wants to move, to be honest. So I'm not going to have to force the issue yet. I don't think any of the buttons hold it in place. I'm not sure why. You think once you flick the clips off it, it should, but maybe I ought to do the top ones first or something. That knob would have to come off. So I've got a nice little pile of black screws here. Oh, okay, let's screw on the end as well. Now, where's that little short screwdriver? I've been more use. Someone's been at that one before. I think they've butchered the head a bit. Another one on the other end. So we've got a circuit board, bunch of switches, bit of an oddball design this thing. Now I'm guessing we still probably have to take that off. No, it's just on wires to it, so it shouldn't have to. There we go. If I flick one end off, it's starting to get it, so maybe we've got to flick this bit. Oh yeah, I can see another little catch thing there. Here we go. Something's just got to be careful we're not pulling on any switches or stuff we shouldn't be pulling on. There's all these switch levers there, and something's pulling back at this tape end. It's not the wiring. That's just slowly working its way free, but I've got to be super careful with those switches, and we've still got no idea. God, there's a spring hanging off under there. No idea what's holding the deck to the front or whatever. I really dislike those switches sticking out like that, because they're just asking to get these levers pulled on and break something. Maybe I do need to start. We've got plugs here, but we've also got a heap of cable ties and wiring and stuff in the way, which is not much good. And these connectors aren't going to go very far. Can I just, I can just pivot that up and over a bit. And this is still well attached to this plastic front somewhere, I guess. Could probably just take the bracket off from here. That'll change the belt, but then we still got the issue of, I need to see why that motor isn't turning. What on earth holds it to the front? Oh yeah, I can see there's a bracket under here and probably one on the other side, so we do have to take the aluminium off. Maybe I could have just taken that off and avoided. Yeah, and these switches are all starting to fall to bits. I might have just careful. Oh, the bloody thing broke. Trying to get it off, it broke. Typical. They do tend to go brittle. That's really annoying. Oh, I've already knocked a bit off the other one too, so that'll be right. Got to be super careful. That's why I do not like this sort of design, but I guess maybe if I'd taken the aluminium off, could have avoided that, but they are very brittle these days in a lot of these things. They can be glued back on, but not ideal. I guess I probably should have a look to see if there's a manual online, might tell you how to actually get it to bits, but usually they're not that difficult. That really is tight, so maybe I've got to push them down. Ah, this is one, you never know with these things. It's sort of something still feels a bit like it's held on by something. I've taken the screw out. What there? Something here is holding it on. Which was the original reason I didn't take it off, because it felt that something's... Is it just tight? It's probably just tight. It's just needs to be jiggled the right way. It's a really tight fit, I think. And of course, every time it moves, some of the clips go back in. God, yeah, not much fun, that one. And we've got 2 screws on the front, that'll be right. Very odd front panel design, that one. But it didn't cost hardly anything, this deck. I almost didn't bother buying it, but I thought, oh, it's a Pioneer, it'll be a bit different. And a bit of a challenge, no doubt, which it is. At least it didn't go in the e-waste, so that's something, I guess. So that's just literally got a shaft there with a knurled sort of bit of brass on it and an idler tyre up against it. So you'd think there wouldn't be much to go wrong with that. I guess the idler's probably slipping, and that's going to be a problem if it is, because trying to source parts for these things, now that a lot of these companies don't really support anything anymore. There's our power switch. Now I've got to hold. Ooh, just went into play on its own. And that idler's doing nothing by the look of it. Oh, maybe you don't have to press that into. Pretty sure that's not turning, but what's. Oh, that's the counterbelt there. Yeah, it's just whipping along doing nothing. That's the eject. Should be the eject. It's just a bit stiff, I think. Yeah, rather. Might be the old slow release. Either there's not enough gravity on it or it's getting old and needs a bit of work to. Does these just clip off? This is why I'm not a fan of plastic clips everywhere, because things tend to break easily if once they get to this age. Okay, so I've lubricated up the idler assembly a bit and took a little bit of tension off the spring, and it sort of swings across, so it doesn't seem to want to go into rewind now. And it is moving up and down a bit, so I'd say that rubber tyre is a bit uneven. If I go to fast forward, it manages to swing across. And that's just the auto stop kicking in. When I go to rewind, it's not. Plays working, has a reasonable amount of torque. Fast forward has quite a lot of torque. Rewind, if I manually flick it across, probably not as good as it should be, so it's probably to do with this tyre being worn and maybe down in diameter or something compared to what it used to be. It's another thing, it probably wears away slowly a bit. So I think it really does need a new idler tyre. I don't think there's any getting away from that. I thought I'd see if I could just patch it up to get it going for now. But looks like we're going to have to see if a new idler tyre is available for it. And if not, there's not a lot I can probably do with it. Maybe one out of an old video belt kit or something might fit. I might have a quick look at some of the ones I've got here for some machines and see whether there's anything in them that might even be close. But otherwise, yeah, we're kind of in trouble. I doubt Pioneer would stock the parts anymore. So we'll see what we do with it. Okay, back on this Pioneer deck. I managed to get an idler tyre off eBay. Came from somewhere in Europe. Looks like it's the right one for a whole lot of different Pioneer deck models. So it looks like they must use this deck in a few other ones besides just this one with this rather weird setup in it. So we'll try and get that fitted and see if that gets this thing running. So get that little clip back off the idler without trying not to fling it across the room. Oh, this actually comes apart, does it? I didn't know that was sprung. Or at least I'd forgotten. Ah, well, that's a bit of a moronic design. Not the best design there, made to shoot the little clip across the room potentially. Yeah, I don't think I actually had this part apart before. So we'll see if we can get that little idler tyre off. Sometimes you've got to carefully insert something under there. You can cut them, since it's old and stuffed anyway. Can cut them with a pair of side cutters or something potentially and get them off that way. It's very tight. I think the rubber's gone a bit hard on that by the feel of it. This one doesn't want to come out of the bag. Yeah, it's a lot better feeling rubber there, a bit stretchier and stuff. That's all good. We did lubricate this up. And you'll just check the clutch. There's a little clutch felt under there, seems to be okay, so I'll have to pull that down a bit. Yeah. Yes, that's not a great design. Having a clutch built in there that you then got to try and hold this bit down. Should be easy to get on there while you put the little clip on. That's okay. Not that bad, it's just, yeah, a bit of a worry when you don't realise there's a spring there. And I'll just clean this a bit of mucking under there. A few little patches of rust and stuff, I'm not sure where that's come from. And does this spring belong behind this door or something? Must do, I think. I think that's just dropped off. I've got to open it anyway. I actually kind of think I'll get it powered up. Just being careful because it's live. Oh god, that is nasty. Look at that, right next to the mechanism. 2 live terminals there and another 2 on the switch, so that's a really nasty design really. So we're just got to keep that deck away from that back bit there, because Pioneer in their wisdom of, are we on? We are now. I didn't even have the bench turned on. Oh, we're up and we have take up. Now we're having a lot of torque. Excellent. Rewind. Oh, tons of torque. Can barely stop that. Amazing the difference it makes. You'd think the old one, putting a bit more pressure and stuff on it, or roughing up the surface would work, but it just doesn't. I think it's got something to do with the fact the rubber's so hard. Now I better be careful here if I try and show people what's going on with that 240 volts there. Very nasty. We should be able to, I think, without shorting anything out, get this deck going. So you can see that's running and it takes a bit of force to stop it. Rewind's really hard to stop. I think we're getting the auto stop kicking in, and that's got a heap of torque as well. It is a little lumpy there, is it? Idler's moving around a little bit, so it's possible. I'm just going to turn the power off every time. This thing's way too dangerous, very risky. I might just give that all a clean anyway. I think it's all squeezed in properly, so maybe there is a little bit of eccentricity in something there. Could be the actual plastics, could even be the reels, I guess, but probably not if it's doing it on both directions. I'll just give the surface a clean and remove any fingerprints, which probably won't matter much, but any grease I might have put on there after touching other bits of the mech. Wakey wakey, it's a bit slow to get going now. It automatically goes into play for some reason. Yeah, that's really good. Oh, was. What just happened then? It does sit maybe a tad high. Guess we should try it with an actual tape, so it's got some actual something to work on. Where's a longer tape? Best place to test it is rewind and fast forward on at least a 60-minute. Why did that stop? Oh, probably because we haven't got the counter connected. Didn't stop for any mechanical reason, I don't think, other than we've got a sensor out somewhere, which is what I was doing before. Yeah, it runs a certain amount of time and stops. Auto stop seems to work alright. Power off. Oh yeah, there is a magnetic Hall effect sensor on the counter. Now I'm trying to remember, did I actually do anything with the belts in this, or were they okay? That one's just getting towards the slippy stage, but it's pretty good. This is 24th of November 83 on that motor, and 19th of October 87 on the other one, so that doesn't really tell me much. 83 and 87, so unless that one's been replaced at some stage, and then the machine was made in 83, or maybe it was made around 87 using an older idler there. I might just give everything, I don't know if I ever got around to cleaning the heads or anything, but we'll give them a clean. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of muck on the erase head by the look of it. Playback head looks like it's barely been used. There's no other sign of much wear anyway. There's maybe a little bit. Does have a little lip on it if you scrape your fingernail across, which may have been like that from the factory, but probably not. Looks like it's worn into the face a tad. So I don't know if that idler wore out because of age, or just because as in lots of use, or because of just age, because of it went hard because the rubber deteriorated, or whether it was doing much use. Makes you wonder if the pinch roll is much better. But the fact the belts are in good nick, they could have been replaced, I guess, at some point. Quite likely have been if this has been around since the 80s, which it obviously has. But sometimes if they're kept in good conditions and used occasionally, the belts will last okay. I guess I probably should get the reels. I don't know if I ever clean the reels where the new idler is going to run, but it wouldn't hurt to do so. Yeah, it looks okay, but yeah, possibly that head's a bit worn, a bit hard to tell. Well, I reckon it had a smooth face originally, so it has cut down a slight little valley over the head bit, over the pickup part. Now, I've got to fix these switches, haven't I? I've got to put a few things back together here. Maybe we can move the camera back up a bit. Got to put our plastic bit here back in. Now, there must be a counter belt here too, so I've got to put that on first, I would think. How's that belt looking? Not the best, but let's throw that cotton belt away. No, there it is. There's a little bit of something on the belt there I'll just clean off. I mean, counter belts are not very critical anyway. They'll go for years and years and years, even when they're fairly worn. But if they do start slipping, you'll get intermittent turning off and stuff. How does this thing go in? It must just clip in, I think. Yeah, like that. Nice and simple. And yeah, I've got these switch bits that I think one or two of them broke, which is pretty common with these decks. Well, there are only two of them, are there? Oh, where's the third one? That's a worry. Ooh, geez, I'm missing one. So there's two for the bottom, normal, high, and chrome. Where did the other one go? I didn't take that out. Oh, there it is. Maybe I did take it out originally. So that's the square one that goes up high. I think that goes, does it go in the middle? Or does it go to one side? Dolby. Oh yes, it's the label, so it goes to one side. And one of these is still intact. Now do they go up? If I put them on the wrong way, there's a risk I'll break them trying to get them off again to put them in the right way. So you've got to be a bit careful Oh, I have put it on the wrong way, I think. That doesn't look right either. That's the hassle when you haven't worked on it for a while, is remembering where everything went. It goes that way by the look of it. So that first switch loops off to one side there. The other one probably loops across to it as well, does it? Like the same way? Yeah, I reckon it does. And then this big one possibly comes over the top, I think. It looks kind of like the right spacing. It can't really go any other way. Yeah, they're always a hassle, these things, when they decided to fall off, because then you've got to try and work out how to stick them back on again. Looks like I've actually got the piece there, have I? I think I used to wrap a bit of wire around them or something. I can see a bit of one of them. Or you can even put a pin through into that switch, or maybe just some arrow dot or something to hold it. Is that broken off this one? Yeah, that's the bit that was originally on this one. You probably could even just melt that in place for the moment, just so we've got something to purchase on the switch. Doesn't look like I've got the bit of the other one. And I think I'll just put some arrow dot on there and glue it. About all I can do with it. I think, yeah, if you arrow dot it and then maybe wrap a bit of wire around as well just to strengthen it. So if we just melt that a bit. Just hold that in place for now. Since I put it on, it'll probably break. Yeah, it's come loose already. Not surprising. So I think I might have to just try and glue it. Make sure I got it in the right position first, of course. Be a real pain out. Oh, now it's broken off just from that. It's just such a silly idea, really. You have these things that stick right out of brittle plastic and go through the front. And the front panel's gonna hit them no matter what you do, pretty much. So, not the greatest design from Pioneer here. They did, on this whole deck's rather weird the way they've made it. And yeah, the worst thing is they made it out of flimsy plastic, or plastic that goes flimsy with time. But I think this was always a pretty brittle, rubbishy sort of plastic, really, that never should have been put in a job like this, because it's just asking for trouble. And yeah, looks like it's almost impossible to get the front on without hitting them a bit. I think I'm going to just have to glue that and put something underneath it to hold it. But unfortunately some of them are like this. I mean, it's always a risk with TVs and anything. You have to be very careful with those sort of switches. Where's the screwdriver? Any switches that stick out with long shafts on them like that are prone to getting broken. It either breaks the shaft, or if you put enough force it'll break the switch off. The actual shaft off the switch rather than the plastic shaft that goes to the front panel for the consumer. Yeah, that just does not want to even stick together, that plastic. It's just hopeless. I'll fill that up with a bit of arrow dot. Can't even get it to stay there just to put it back together. It's ridiculous. Yeah, would have been nice if it held in a bit tight. I think I'm going to have to wrap some wire around it before I even go anywhere. I wonder if that old idler will fit under there. It's going to be close and a bit too thick, I think. So we can get that back together, and I guess I'll have to try and... Worst thing is it takes up some of your bench space, And that's not even 5-minute erudite, which is even more annoying. I've got to remember to get some of the quick stuff. Wow, how am I going to get this one to stay in position? That's going to be fun. I think that one's going to have to sit aside for now and dry. Chuck that idler away. Okay, I'm back on this Pioneer. Looks like that button's glued on alright. Oh, that's right, I put a piece of plastic under there. I better take that out just to hold it in place while it's glued. I think that's pretty good. God, yeah, the other one that's still intact is pretty flimsy the way it's on there. And I still have the issue of this other one. I'm starting to think I might have to put the front panel in place and then try and glue this on after I've done that. Yeah, one side's, a whole side's missing off it. But I think with a bit of glue and with the front panel in place it'll probably be alright, so I've got to very carefully, I'm hoping that'll fit. I have to try and fit these other two through the hole. See, they're already catching on stuff. And really not a good design. The poor old technician that's got to work on this stuff. Oh, now did I have to screw that tape deck in? I think that was the case, and I've got this spring floating around here. So yeah, not a lot of fun to work on. What is going on here? Yeah, so the issue of this spring on the door here just hanging free. I'm not sure what that actually, where that actually goes. Oh, did it go under that bit? Oh, it goes under there. Well, look at that. That must be it. Yeah. So it goes up under these two little lever things, and the other end, does that just, I think it just sits, you can see where it's been sitting on the bottom panel. I don't know why I had to take the front panel off, I think, to get this. It doesn't look like I had to take it off to get it out, because I can get it back in there now. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Maybe I should have left that front panel on all along. Let's clip that back on the chassis. Now, can we get this? Oh, I've got to get that belt back on. Oh yeah, we can get that back in from behind. Oh, perfect. Well, at least that redeems it a bit. Yeah, put the counter belt back on, so we don't get anything stopping. So it looks like I can glue that back into place. Other ones are working well. So I guess I can start putting some screws back in this thing and trying to get these top ones in. But I think I've got to take the aluminium piece off to get a couple of the front screws in the deck. Or mech. Guess a consistent terminology would be good. And put the front on that end. Okay, now things at least held together a bit better. And there's another 3 screws under there. They've got a hell of a lot of screws holding all this front stuff together. That's better. Oh, that's the aluminium. Yeah, don't put the one in the aluminium yet, because I think I've got to take that off again. Don't see any empty holes, that's a good sign. Take that off. Oh yeah, so we could have fiddled around with the switches, I guess, like this. Got 2 screws in the front of the deck, but they're all lined up, that's the main thing. That leaves me with 4 screws, which I assume are for the top cover. I think I want this bit back on so that that button is held in place while the glue sets. Oop, there's that button. Now I still got to line these two up carefully and not to break them. Since they're so flimsy. Oh, I do need one of those 4 screws I've got left to hold the aluminium front on. Oh, maybe there's 3 screws in the top cover. And looking at the top cover, there's 3 on the back, 1 in the middle and 1 each end, so that's good. I might have the right amount of stuff. Oh, this is even a D-shaped shaft on the pot, which is always nice because you don't have to align it up. It just only goes one way and it's in the right spot. So everything's basically back together. Does that power button work? Yep. Eject is ejecting. I guess I can put the door back on it. Nice to see that back on it. It's a bit dirty, so that wants a bit of a clean, but anyway. At the moment I'll just be glad if I can get this thing actually back together and give it a bit of a test run. So yeah, a bit more araldite in there to hold that on. And put that to the side again. Well, that sets, and at least that's going back together. That'll be another thing that I've got a part for I can get rid of. I'll at least put on the finished pile. But yeah, I am going to have to start getting rid of some of this stuff, I think, because too much junk lying around at the moment. Bit on the cold side for doing araldite really, but I don't have much choice. Bit better on a warmer day really. Make sure we get plenty in there. I'll put a little bit more on this side and the end a bit. Not ideal, but I don't really have much choice but to glue these on. Okay, back on this Pioneer tape deck. All the buttons seem to be working again. We had a couple of bits of brittle plastic break. I don't think I've actually even tried this thing on the amplifier yet to see what it even sounds like. So I guess I'll chuck a tape in everything, but make sure the tape functions are still all working, I guess. Yeah. And make sure the actual counter doesn't stop or anything, or the auto stop doesn't stop because the counter's not connected. Counter seems to be going around. We've got some level meters happening here. Not quite the same on each one. I guess put them back on a normal. Dolby off. Now let's have a listen. Yeah, that seems to be running alright. Sounds nice and high. Not hearing any wow just yet. Well, just on listening on a bit of music that I recorded on that backup tape deck I just did, it seems alright, but we'll get the test tape and just see. Can't really trust that other thing for whether the levels are correct or not. At least the VU meter's looking the same there. Not hearing any wow in that. Bit of hiss, but no wow. This is another tape deck. Second one out of that batch of cheapo decks that actually has a really good motor in it for a change. But yeah, that seems really good. I can hear something making, there was a slight noise, that's right in that capstan. And the motor's maybe making a slight noise. Oh yeah, so bit of a squealy motor there. But at least it doesn't have any wow in it while it's playing, surprisingly. Really should check that on the oscilloscope, make sure both levels are the same coming off both channels, but they certainly sound alright to my ear, and the meters are showing the same. There's no reason to think that this thing would be out. I did give this a clean, I think, didn't I? Yeah, I've given that a clean. But yeah, that motor's definitely a tad on the noisy side. I forgot that was making a funny noise before. If it is actually the motor, but the capstan does make a little bit of a whirring sound when you tilt the deck forward. I'm pretty sure that is the motor. I guess the easiest way to find out is just flick the belt off it, even though it may not do it without load on it, which it doesn't, of course. Yeah, pushing on the motor shaft stops it. I think it's got to be the motor, given the speed that it's running at. The capstan isn't going that fast to make that high pitch of noise. So it looks like we've got a slight issue there. Now where's record? See how that comes up on the meters. Pretty much the same. Not sure if this deck's just got better high frequency response or what, but it sounds a lot more hiss than the Akai one. But it does kind of sound a bit brighter in the high end too, so maybe that's because it's actually got better high frequency response. But you can certainly notice the hiss a bit more on this one, which is pretty much what you got with tape decks. If they were a good deck with a good high frequency, you would get hiss, and then you'd put your Dolby on and that would cure it a bit, but it'd also take out the high end, which was, I actually thought it was more of a loss to lose the high end than get rid of that little bit of hiss. But yeah, she's a bit on the hissy side. So we do still have a little bit of an issue with the motor running a bit noisy. And there is also the issue of that capstan, which I think we can almost remove them from the deck without actually having to take everything to bits again. But just again, got to be careful of these 240 volts on this bare wires there, right where you're working. I'm just going to see if I can actually take this back part of the deck off without pulling everything out. Because you'd hope you'd be able to do it in situ, but it depends whether the manufacturer wanted you to or not. Could really do with a shorter screwdriver, I think, there, but this is the perfect size for it. There, I'll get one end of it off. That's loose. Now the question is, what other things, if anything, are going to come loose that are going to be a pain? And now I'm going to have my screwdriver right up in the mains voltage selector. Since I'm using, I don't actually have a stubby version of this type of screwdriver, I don't think. So this is definitely not an easy deck to work on as far as safety. Is that going to come out? I think all the wiring is going to hold the back part of the mech involved. Look at something's definitely holding it down there. I think the screw's loose, but or is it the actual? Is there a clip there? What is that? Very strange. There is like another mounting post there. Just a plastic. Ah, it's just a little pin. So it can't possibly be a screw because it's on the end of a very long shaft. So you can get this apart Now the problem was that the motor wouldn't make the noise, but we do have all these wires holding everything together. Get that twist tie out of the way. Now we're talking. Now I should better get the real motor out of the way. It's wiring. Get those other wires out of that metal bracket. Now it's in the way in a different spot. And here we have the motor basically loose. So whether we can run it with that switch loose. Now I've got to be careful because there's going to be 240 volts on this thing. Pretty noisy, but not squealing. Certainly think that at least needs a bit of an oil. And the other thing we have is the capstan. Does it have a plastic thing on it? It does, so you've got to pull that back a bit and then remove. Let's get rid of the door. Remove this. Oh, better be careful, but there's a plastic, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, little plastic washer on the shaft there. You can probably just see that coming out, sort of translucent colour thing. So we'll remove that, put that somewhere safe, and the capstan can just pull out the other side and check. It does have a washer down in there, so you'd think it'd be pretty right, but I'm going to put a light bit of oil on that, just a small amount of oil, just to give that shaft a little bit of a lube and get a little bit on that washer probably, just so it it still makes that noise like something's rubbing. Wouldn't have thought it was supposed to do that. It's not bumping on anything that I can see, so it's got to basically be, it's never going to be in that position, but yeah, I don't know why that's making a rubbing sound. Maybe that's an issue from manufacturing. Possibly another little washer on there would make a difference, but that one seems to be okay. So it's possible if that bit of plastic down in there has moved, and this thing can move forward slightly. You'd have to take this whole plastic bit out and probably replace it. Does it even move in here? But we don't want it to move, to be honest. I think I'll leave that alone. So I don't think I'll worry about that one too much. At least it's been lubricated. I guess the other thing is, can I get a bit of oil down in this thing? Right on the bearing there. Am I safe to turn it on? Oh, that's a lot quieter. A lot quieter. This may be all it needed. Probably hasn't been used in a long time. That doesn't help. Barely hear it now like it should be, so that must have just had a bit of a dry bearing there. Or bushing as it is, I guess. So I'll leave that spinning a bit in that position, let that oil soak down a bit, spray a bit here and there. And I'll have to make sure that pulley's nice and clean, because a bit of the oil got on that. Remove the worst, but we'll put a cotton bud on that, and there's a bit of oil under there too where we don't want it. So it should be on the bearing and not much else ideally. Don't want it able to get onto the belt. But yeah, that's much better. Barely a sound from that. I can feel it vibrating more than I can hear it. But yeah, the actual capstan, I was going to see if I could get another set of those washers, because it's too hard to try and find them in something. But you could buy a set with those little plastic washers in, and sometimes you get something like this, you just add an extra one to give it a bit more clearance, because possibly that plastic bit, like I say, in the actual inside the flywheel there has moved slightly. Doesn't seem to be an issue while it's playing normally. It's only when you tilt the deck forward. But in a perfect world, yeah, you'd do something about that. But surprisingly, with both that not 100% and the motor actually vibrating and squealing, it still sounds like it's got really good wow and flutter, which is surprising. You'd expect that to affect the playback, but this is another one of those motors like in that Acco, I think, and these things seem to go forever by the look of it. Don't think I ever did usually have to replace these ones, but I have got some other old decks here I think that have them playing up. But yeah, these seem to be a good solid motor, these ones. Even when they're playing up a bit, they're not fully faulty. Switch out of the way. Get those wires back in that hole. Come on. I'll try and reassemble this motor and belt, which shouldn't be too hard to do in theory. I think that belt's actually pretty good still. Might give that a quick clean as well while I'm at it. I guess ideally I should have put a new one in there, but I'm not even sure what I'm going to do with this tape deck. Might end up being another VU meter, I think. But I've probably got some other LED VU meters, something I can use. But it's actually good to get a couple that have good motors in them for a change, and can actually be used if you wanted to play tapes or if you want to record test tapes. These decks are actually quite good. This one and that Acco one that I end up using as a fluorescent VU meter, and I think it's worth keeping one good tape deck probably these days, just in case you ever have something you want to transfer or whatever. It's always good to have something able to play different formats. Now we're going to try and get, what's going on there with that white thing there, lift that up, get that little pin thing here back in there. I can probably just about screw those main screws to the chassis again before worrying about putting those little ones in. There was that one, don't think that was attached to it, that was only attached to one of the small ones. I'll at least put them in place, not fully tight, because I'll probably have to tweak things, move things around. And then we can put one back on this side. Oh, I've got to put that little washer back on the capstan too, and give that a clean, make sure there's no oil on the shaft of that. And then we can test it, see if it sounds alright. If it does, I think we've successfully fixed this thing, despite a bit of messing around. And thankfully, after I paid for a new idler for it, it is all in good working order as far as the motor and everything. Now, how do we get this little switch? Now that's got to go with those red orange wires there. Now, were they above, below? I can't remember now. It's always the problem. I think they went above. Just slide that little bracket in there around that white thing, and that should be about in place. Yep. And then I can poke those orange wires back into its. There's a little bit of metal there to hold them. once these other two screws are on, I can screw it to the chassis fully. But yeah, for a couple of decks it only cost like $7-8 each. It actually turned out to be not too bad. I nearly didn't even touch the things, but that Akai got me interested with its fluorescent display. And this thing I sort of looked at and thought, nah, not really interested in a Pioneer one, kind of plasticky 80s one, but then I thought, oh well, for that price, I mean, I can probably get me money back in parts if need be. And we're going to put that little, where did I put that twist tie thing? Oh, there it is. Tie wires back there. Ah, now that I bring them back, I realise there's an earth thing that should have gone under that screw. Wish they wouldn't do that, but often they do in tape decks. You have things to earth the various metal bits, I guess, to stop them humming and stuff. So it looks like that screws would have come out again. So that's all tightened off. I've just got to clean the capstan. Yeah, cotton bud still probably alright. Clean the oil, any oil that potentially got on there off. Give that a spin by hand. And put our little translucent washer back on if I can get that in there. That's always fun. I can't do it with the door shut, can't do it with the door open. I might be able to get my hands through the hole, and it's just your fingers just won't go inside these things to do it. It's always a hassle with them. That's it. Once you get it started, it's fine. It's just trying to get it pushed on that shaft. Okay, so we should be, I better put the wall back on, I guess. Was I going to clean that or something? Oh, yeah, there's a great big sticky fingerprint on there. Probably mine. While that door's off, always a good time to clean it. Outside's not so important, but the inside definitely. And yeah, it's actually quite dust free, this deck, which is surprising. It's very clean condition, so it's been in a very clean spot somewhere. Pretty rare to see electronics this old so dust free no matter where it's been. Now we're on. Barely hear that deck running at all now. Probably make that noise when I tilt it forwards though. Yeah, it does still a bit. Only when I'm right up. You've got to almost have the back right up in the air. So that's better. Yeah, very nice. Okay, the azimuth looks fine on the oscilloscope, but it is just the slightest different in playback level. There's playback level right, playback level left. So it'll be one of them slightly out most likely. And that was the one that was slightly bigger. They're now pretty much identical. Still reading 0 on the meters. Yeah, generally there's a little bit of jitter there, but could even be this tape. But you know, the azimuth's spot on, both waveforms right on top of each other. And yeah, looking very good, so it didn't really need much, but it just ever so slightly out on how many volts? 0.2 volts of division. So it's literally about a volt, so I would have been off by what? Not even 5 millivolts or something. I guess I should have a listen to that higher frequency too while I'm at it. For wow, because it does tend to show up even more on the 10 kilohertz signal, I think. horrible noise, but it's very steady. It's not fluttering. Ooh, it's piercing and horrible like it should be. Yeah, if I was going to be really picky, I'd record something on there and double check that, but it sounded good enough to my ear, so I think I'll leave it at that. But that's finally good to get that done, although, yeah, like I say, I'll have to find another flexible, or another figure 8 cable for it, for the power, since we've only got a terminal block going in. Someone cut that off, unfortunately. I don't really want to put that white one off an electric blanket or whatever it was on there, so I'll put a new cord on there and put the cover back on, and hopefully we can call that a goer. It's actually in almost mint condition. What's that, a bit of grease or something on there? Actually doesn't really have anything in the way of scratches, surprisingly. A little bit of a mark on that knob maybe where it's hit something, but this deck almost looks like it hasn't been used. There's a little bit of dirt on the buttons, but nothing like what you'd normally expect. You'd normally expect lots of scratches just from fingernails and stuff going over these things. There's a few fine scratches on the plastic, but even that's minimal for a door that you'd normally have people putting their fingernails and stuff and pushing it shut. So I'd say this is probably a very low hours deck in reality, and it was just that idler that had worn out in it was the main problem. The motor was probably possibly just noisy because it hadn't been used for so long. Well, I assume it hasn't been used for a long time, but this deck, and it's so clean, it's almost like this thing's been actually stored in its box. That's kind of what it looks like, is it's been stored in its original box, or some sort of box, or a cupboard or something away from people. It's probably the cleanest tape deck I've ever seen, except for one that's like brand new under warranty still. So it's probably not a bad little score, that one. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. I don't really have any use for it. But I guess I can keep an eye out for some other Pioneer bits and pieces to go with it, and maybe put a system together or something, or chuck it on eBay or something to get rid of it. But yeah, besides my little problems with the buttons there, she's pretty much still in mint condition. So thanks for watching.